Diane Keaton, who passed away on October 11, 2025 at 79, was not just an actress who won awards, she was a cultural icon whose decisions both on screen and off reshaped how women could appear, speak, and move in American cinema. Her Annie Hall Oscar took a personal performance and made a public mirror. Her subsequent life kept the mirror confusing, occasionally fractured, but always candid. Who was Diane Keaton at the beginning? Born Diane Hall in January 1946 in Los Angeles, she came from a family that was mundane in some respects and strange in others. A father who had a job in a roofing business, and a mother who fostered a sense of order and taste. She took her mother's maiden name as her last name when she started out doing acting in New York, the age-old tale of reinvention that so many performers enact literally with their names. Dance was part of her early life, a transition into work on stage, and an admission to the legendary neighborhood playhouse where the beginnings of a craft first took form. Those initial choices, the training, the moving, the title established Keaton on a course that combined training with an ability for parts to permit her to be offbeat and vulnerable. What differentiated Keaton in her breakthrough? Briefly, tone and selection. She broke into the mainstream with parts that would not be simple. Her work as Kay Adams in the Godfather trilogy provided her with a rich, dignified presence in an otherwise masculine epic. Following this came the innovative collaboration with Woody Allen, leading to Annie Hall, 1977. Annie Hall was no film, it was a cultural reboot. Keaton's rumpled suits, ties, and fedora in that movie made masculine tailoring a vocabulary of feminine independence and subtlety. She did not perform a caricature of womanhood. She universalized the awkward, humane edges of her character. The performance won her the Best Actress Academy Award and rewrote popular conceptions of what a leading lady might, or how she might move, and what she might say. When did the public finally acknowledge Keaton as someone beyond a role? The late 1970s and early 1980s were the turning point. The success of Annie Hall did not pin Keaton in a single lane. She followed with roles that checked range, looking for Mr. Goodbar Red's Baby Boom, and subsequently crowd pleasers such as Father the Bride and Something's Gotta Give. Each selection was a note in a more extensive melody that combined risk and reassurance. She might become quietly devastating in a drama, and then in another scene disarm with an offhand joke. With time, the public came to appreciate Keaton, the artist, one who selects parts as an artist selects color. Her career indicated longevity in Hollywood could result from a willingness to zag where others zig. How did she develop that craft? Keaton's performance was not a one-trick pony. It achieved through timing, restraint, and a conversational closeness that felt both natural and carefully managed. In Annie Hall, the pauses counted. In The Godfather films, the small, contained gestures had weight. Off-screen, she chronicled her life in photograph, and words which cycled back into a view of performance observation counts. She went about pieces the way a poet assembles images, by paying attention to things others dismiss, and then causing them to signify. That technique is why decades later, Annie Hall, she was still able to believably portray a mother, a widow, a romantic interest, or a woman reconsidering love. There is a definite human axis to Keaton's life that the tabloids sometimes omit: her personal struggles and how they influenced her work. She talked openly about fights with bulimia in early adulthood, and then fought skin cancer and other scares later in her life. Those instances of openness were not tabloid grist. They were strands in a thread of survival and rebirth. Keaton's public image, rise stylish, privately nervous, felt to many like someone who'd survived hard edges and retained her sense of humor. Her openness regarding health and privacy was itself an exercise in self-authorship. She dictated what she told, and when she told it, it was in order to define an experience instead of being defined by it. Coverage of her death echoed that same pattern. She died following about a failing health circumstance, reported with restraint and deference by family spokespeople and close associates. Why did her way of dressing matter beyond the closet? The Annie Hall style connects vests, hats, menswear, silhouettes, transposed for a woman, redefined fashion's vocabulary. It wasn't about stealing masculinity, but about providing space for a new type of presence. Fashion critics came to refer to it years later as revolutionary because it presented an alternative to glamour as the sole presentation of women's power on film. Keaton's clothing spoke you can be odd and serious you can dress for comfort, and for brains you can be a leading lady without dressing up in a cliché. That quiet style doctrine was echoed in editors' pages and in young women seeking models who didn't insist the female body be rearranged time and again to gratify a male gaze. What of her collaborations, the projects and people that shaped and were shaped by her? Woody Allen is the inevitable early collaborator, and their professional and personal entwinement fueled some of her most renowned work. Later, she also established a significant creative partnership with Nancy Meyers, whose films provided Keaton roles that balanced warmth with maturity roles in such films as The First Wives Club and Something's Gotta Give permitted Keaton to be romantic, humorous, and sage. She then collaborated with Francis Ford Coppola, Warren Beatty, and several others, taking on projects that spanned genre and tone. Both colleagues elicited various sides of Keaton's ability: the comedic accuracy, the sadistic depth, the ability to sustain a scene with subtlety rather than spectacle. When did Keaton transition from acting to other cultural functions? Over many decades, she branched out into directing, producing, writing, and photography. Her photo and nonfiction books display a sensibility that's tactile and architectural. She writes about objects, about houses, about memory. That work goes along with her acting. Both are acts of framing. She also adopted children later in life, which remade her private priorities and nourished decisions regarding roles in public life. In the later years leading up to her death, she was regarded as a matriarchal presence in Hollywood, an individual whose presence spoke of history lessons and a resolute kind of grace. How did the industry react to her death? The initial reaction following her death was universal and sincere. Tributes flowed in from co-stars, directors, and newer actors who found in Keaton a generation bridge. The tone of the tributes leaned towards similar themes: originality, niceness on set, and unorthodox bravery. Mainstays published retrospectives combining archival interviews with new reminiscences, reflecting on both her art and her cultural impact. For many, the loss was both intimate and historical, a clean note on the end of a long, impactful verse in American film. If one inquires what made Keaton lasting respond to this, she altered without losing continuity. Early on, her work might be spiky and guarded. Subsequently, she let in tenderness into the lens. That transition can be seen along the arc from ironic Annie Hall to the sunny Nearly Self, effacing family comedies and love dramas. But the through line is craft. Keaton never relied on caricature or star power alone. She worked scenes like a writer drafts sentences, trimming, refining, listening to what the material actually needed. She could be daring and conservative in the same performance, and that paradox is crucial. The audience trusted her because she seemed to earn each laugh, each tear, each silence. What did scholars and critics have to say? In the course of time, film critics maintained that Keaton's performances were templates of contemporary American acting, understated, inner, and everyday. Gender and film scholars referencing Annie Hall frequently emphasized the way that Keaton's performance unsettled traditional romantic comedy conventions. Instead of serving as a foil to a male narrator, she became a partner, and in a sense the conscience of the film. Her subsequent roles called for rethinking age and attractiveness in Hollywood. She made middle-aged and older women visible and interesting. Those transformations made a difference because they shifted not only casting, but also expectations about audiences. When was she subjected to the harshest criticism? Keaton's long acting career wasn't free of controversy or criticism. The most enduring critical objections concern the nature of her relationships with male directors and the control dynamic of those collaborations, particularly in subsequent reckonings regarding Woody Allen. Public discourse regarding responsibility and art muddled how spectators perceive the Allen-era films. Keaton, as with other artists of her generation, was a lightning rod for wider concerns about divorcing art from the artist and making sense of historical context for behavior currently condemned. These debates recast aspects of her legacy not by eliminating accomplishments, but by complicating the way we place them in context. How did Keaton manage celebrity? Contrary to some performers who thrive on perpetual visibility, Keaton protected an inner life. She wrote books of photographs and essays which presented an individual more concerned with curiosity than with celebrity. She was frank when she did speak, but otherwise eschewed the sideshow of self-promotion. That reserve made her appearance seem more uncommon and hence more precious. It also meant that if she did talk about health, art, or family, it stuck with weight and was felt as personal rather than acting. Why does her passing feel like a cultural moment? Timing is part of it. Keaton lived long enough to span several generations of film. From the auteur-driven 1970s through the studio comedy renaissance of the 1990s and into the age of streaming, she evolved. She stayed relevant without pandering, and that's unusual. The expressions of sorrow and remembrance following her death indicate how thoroughly she may have become internalized as a point of reference. Actresses, filmmakers, fashion designers, and ordinary viewers who emulated her style or looked to her unobtrusive moral certitude on screen. Her death isn't the conclusion of life, it's a cultural punctuation point that encourages examination, rethinking, and thankfulness. What are lessons in her life for artists? 3 come immediately to mind. First, select work that opens up instead of limiting you. Keaton switched between genres and formats, and that diversity kept her art on its toes. Second, cultivate a personal practice: photography, writing, collecting that nourishes public work. Keaton's outside of film projects weren't ego trips, they were part of an aesthetic. Third, be truthful about vulnerability. Keaton's candor about struggles with the self humanized her and made performances seem hard-won instead of manufactured. Those are lessons anyone constructing a long career in creative pursuits can put to use. How will people remember Diane Keaton? Historians will likely isolate Annie Hall as the defining moment, but they will also comment on the contours of a career that wouldn't fossilize. Keaton becomes a case study in the ability of an actor to shape fashion culture and conceptions of feminine interiority without sacrificing complexity. Future retrospectives will inevitably question the moral entanglements of some collaborations, even as they bask in the artistry. In that ambiguity lies a truer legacy, complicated, influential, and very human. Lastly, the small facts that count. She took home 1 Academy Award. She had several nominations to follow. She took in 2 children. She was awarded an AFI Life Achievement Award in 2017. She was still a figure in public life well in her late 70s. Her passing on October 11, 2025, led to tributes that span generations, a testament that she had transcended being a performer. She was shorthand for a sensibility in American culture that valued wit, observation, and human contradiction. The entire life of Diane Keaton exists both on and off the screen. The photos, the essays, the outtakes, the interviews, in which she allows a laugh to escape a serious idea. That rough, lovely mixture is why her work will be debated, taught, and adored for generations to come.